Spartacus, if you had a bowl full of jelly beans and you pulled a bunch of them out and you found that 152 of those jelly beans were poison, would you feel very confident in continuing to eat that bowl of jelly beans? Because that's basically what you're advocating for here in a more simplified way. If there was 155, 156 people that were found to be innocent, that were taken off of death row, do you think there's a lot of people that haven't been found? Yeah, so I have not followed the drama between DemonMama and Destiny, which I'm pretty sure is what kind of caused this topic to come up. So I'm just going to give my best take on this from what I've seen, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
I feel like most of the arguments that are brought up in against the death penalty don't really work. The jelly bean analogy doesn't work. Would you eat one jelly bean or would you eat a jelly bean out of 150 if one was poison? I mean, like, we essentially make this deal every single time we get into a car and drives, every single time we get into an airplane and go somewhere. Like, we make this deal all the time.
Well, hey.
Hello. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Nope.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay. I want to thank you all for coming to the second ever Hippy Dippy Rumble. We have a long cast of characters and individuals here, but of course this is an episode of class. I know everyone here is good friends, right? And will be cordial in tonight's events, because we all know that Vosh, that scoundrel, that ruffian, that disgusting man who would be outclassed by many intellectuals like Jimmy Dore and Jackson Hinkle, lost the belt because he disrespected this business. So I'm happy that we have all of you here today to bring class back to the business, whoever becomes champion. Now, I'm going to go over the rules of the championship. The first rule, of course, is that when I'm talking, nobody else is talking. I do this purely to maintain order. There will be no outros and intros because this event is purely based on what you can do in the time periods allotted to you. At the end of every round, a panel of 3 judges, Katarana, Danabo, and surprise guest judge, Vadim Newquest, host of Creationist Cat, will be judging your performance. If you do poorly or do not talk enough, you'll be eliminated. If you do good enough, you'll stay in. I want no complaints. The odds of you winning the championship, considering the amount of people here, is 6.25%. So please enter this knowing that most likely you're a humegalol who is going to lose. If you do that, then you can't get your feelings hurt. I'm looking at you, Xander.
Yeah, I'm with WHO Megaloi now.
Now, besides that, the other rules is no slurs, nothing against TOS, and no attacks based on immutable characteristics. That means no going after anybody because of their race, gender, sexual orientation, identity, or anything of that sort.
What if they're immutably stupid?
That's fine.
Is religion fine?
Religion? Oh God. Let's just pretend the question wasn't asked. Anyway.
Well, what about if they're Jewish? Is that like religious or ethnic? Is that okay?
Okay, you know what? We're not going after religion. We're taking that off the table. Thank you very much. So, welcome to the championship. We're going to start the first round, which will be about 25 minutes before the first person is voted off and replaced. The first topic is, how is Biden doing as president? How is he doing as president? Is he doing a decent job? Is he doing a bad job? I will introduce you all because we don't have time for intros. The people on your screen right now is American Nacho on the top left. Next to him is Counterpoints. Next to them is DemonMama. Next to them is Destiny. I, of course, am Dylan Burns TV, your luxurious host. Next to me is Sprouticus. Then it is Trihex. Then Xanderhal. Then Lonerbox. You can find all the information in the description of the YouTube video that will be produced afterwards. You may begin. Please remember to follow the rules. And remember, always be nice. Make sugar your favorite spice. You may begin.
Yeah. Penis.
All right, guys. What do you want to start with? Do you want to start with his response to COVID, his infrastructure plan, immigration? Where do we want to start?
Are you saying if it's positive or negative? I want to start with the fact that the first problem Biden encountered, he directly handed it off to his vice president. Like, the first actual problem he went into office and encountered, it was, okay, this is Kamala Harris's problem, not mine.
What problem was that?
Immigration and the border wall.
Yeah, she went over to, what was it? I think it was Guatemala, where she did like a statement about it, where she talked about how they're going to be giving, I think it was $2 or $3 trillion in aid. I forget what country it is. It's in South America, and it's got, like, we have a lot of immigrants that come to there due to the crime and the corruption of the government. She said she's going to, the Biden administration's going to be funneling a ton of money over there to help root out the corruption and stem the crime.
It didn't even want her there, though. First off, that country didn't even want her there. Second off, she still hasn't been to the border. The closest she got was 30 miles away in San Antonio. That is the closest.
Wait. One at a time. One at a time. The first person I heard was Destiny, so I'm gonna give it to him.
Yeah, so number one, delegating things to your VP is not a bad thing. I don't know why we make that sound like a bad thing. And number two, who the fuck cares if you actually go to the border wall or not? I mean, I guess we can talk about like the optics of how that looks, but I think it's probably more relevant to talk about border wall policy, whether or not you have a photo op of the border wall.
It's not just a photo op, is it? It's more than a photo op. You're going down the border to see what's on the ground with your own eyes, because that's really how you get a perspective of what's going on, is when you look at it through your own eyes. You can say no, Destiny, all you want, but this is how presidents have done it for decades. Okay, when something goes down, they go there. And Biden decided that it was Kamala Harris's problem, and Kamala Harris didn't even go there. The entire Biden presidency has since been a joke. Biden did about COVID was he adopted Trump's plan with a few minor changes. I'm just saying that it's a bit of a joke.
Like, okay, hold on. This is really silly. It is absolutely normal for presidents to delegate tasks to their vice president. This is a like completely invented grievance. If we're going to talk about things that like Biden has and hasn't done, I have a couple things I could bring up. One of the things, a bit of a topic that's in my wheelhouse that Biden has done really well, which is a civil and social victory, is that he has now instated a federal policy by which trans people can have, without needing a complex and incredibly lengthy process, actually change their gender marker and name on their passport. Again, without a whole pile of paperwork that's necessary. That's really, really awesome. In fact, they're also going to be adding in an option for a non-binary gender selection on passports, which is huge and not something that's likely to be undone. One of the things that I most praised about Obama was the fact that Obama actually put into place a policy by which you could get your passport changed just with a note from your doctor. You no longer need that now, which is fantastic. I support that very much. The only problem with Obama's version was that it was immediately undone by Trump. This is not one that can do that. By adding a non-binary option, it becomes very difficult to undo. That is a civil rights victory. With regard to COVID, I mean, look, anything is better than what Trump did. Trump literally went around saying that COVID wasn't a problem. Right now, I'm just checking, just out of curiosity on Bing here, fatal cases of COVID in America is 612,000. So, you know, I'm just going to say, damn, Biden's done a pretty good job getting the vaccination out to people. We've had a significant drop in deaths from COVID.
Nearly half of all adult Americans are fully vaccinated. It's been pretty significant. On his first day in office, in his first 100 days in office, Biden enacted, I believe it was executive order to mandate mask wearing on federal property and mandatory quarantines for international travel. $2 trillion in spending on COVID relief. Pretty damn significant, way better than Trump. Trump's administration didn't have any plans whatsoever for vaccine rollout. They found that during the transition. Biden's plan, far more constructive, an actual plan for starters that exists, and has had a much larger effect. We're actually starting to see things go back to normal, which would not have happened with Trump.
I thought it was on a panel. Wait. Counterpoints. Hasn't said anything yet. He was the first to grab it. Sure.
I thought I was on a panel with a bunch of leftists. Why are we blowing a neoliberal fascist? What are we doing here? Like, is this just going to be a circle jerk about how fucking...
I'm sorry, have you ever seen me call Biden a neoliberal fascist? Because I don't know if you're aware of my content, but I spent basically the last 2 years, almost 3 years that I've been doing this, shilling for Biden over Trump, okay? There's no doubt in my mind whatsoever at any point that I've been doing this, that Biden was a better pick than
But I thought this was all tactical. I thought it was all tactical because, you know, Trump was like the actual fascist and, you know, the Biden and the Democrats are just just this like ineffectual fucking stopgap for fucking, you know, like.
If you want me to complain about Democrats, we can talk about the infrastructure bill and those that won't vote on it or that won't support it. But I'm not going to take away achievements that Biden has made because I have criticisms of him. That's not how you honestly critique someone.
You're taking them away from Trump. You're taking them away from Trump because the large majority of what Biden has done so far for COVID.
One at a time.
The large majority of what Biden has done so far for COVID was following Trump's guidelines and how he was going to act in the future. He made very little to no changes. He made very little to no changes to the actual plan, and Biden just carried out what Trump was going to do. That's all Biden did.
There was no plan. The transition team told the Biden administration there was no plan.
Pause. DemonMama was the first to grab it. DemonMama is the one who gets to talk. Then Lonerbox, as I've had Lonerbox say anything yet.
Appreciate that. So there's a couple of things I could say here. First of all, if we want to go into critiques of Biden, I do have a very solid critique that I would like to make of Biden. But I think that it's fair to give credit where credit is due. Even me, a extreme lefty, I think it's very good. We are in a time of extreme crisis, and that the good things that are done should be praised. I think that the goal that he has of pushing through the human infrastructure plan is absolutely necessary for our economy. Keep in mind, a pandemic is a disaster that affects individual people. It affects individual people. They get sick, and that damages the economy. We need stuff like that. But if you want to know what my critique of Biden is, well, my critique is that he doesn't have an answer that's good enough for climate change. Climate change is a global threat. I mean, I've been doing so much research on climate change recently, and it is horrifying. If you even go look at the flooding in Germany, literally unprecedented flooding in Germany, if we have something like that happen here, I have no doubt, given our preparedness for something like the pandemic, that we're not ready. And I think that Biden needs to be willing to do aggressive action. And I just don't think he is. I think he's too committed to trying to play bipartisanship with people who are straight up obstructing him every step of the way, sometimes to the degree of just straight up inhumanity. The unwillingness to even engage with the idea that we might need to provide some relief during a global pandemic, and we're supposed to be ready for climate change, a climate change that is surpassing every single prediction that we've had so far, which were already dangerous. Yeah, I'm sorry, but Biden needs to really spine up on that. If you want my criticism of it, that's the biggest one. Climate change is terrorizing our entire country already. We have a drought currently declared in where I live. We have droughts all over California. We have fires. We've begun to have smoke seasons. We're going to be having flooding if we get heavy rains. This is a super, super serious issue that Biden, I mean, for all of his talking about wanting to do an infrastructure plan, simply hasn't pushed hard enough. They need to play dirty. This is a matter of being willing to play hardball with the
problem with that. DemonMama, wait, can I go first?
Sorry, Xander, can I go there? Because I was.
Yeah, it was Loner was next, and then we'll throw it to counter. Just want to be clear.
Cool.
Just to put the.
Wait, I thought next after me. Wait, is Lonerbox after me, or is it Lonerbox me, then Lonerbox, then counterpoints?
I don't know. Act like a man. Get yourself.
Okay, really quickly. So, DemonMama, I understand that. However, it seems like from what I've been.
Xander, I said it would be Loner.
Okay, let Loner do it. Okay.
Thank you. Just to put the COVID relief bill into context, that was, with accounting for time, that was the biggest fiscal stimulus in American peacetime. So I think I heard someone in the background saying that it was more private companies that, no. As for Connor, leftists having a favorable view of Biden. Okay, I'm a leftist. I hate Biden. I wouldn't trust him to sit the right way in a toilet seat. But looking at what he's done so far, politicians are not leaders. A politician's job is to read the room, power relations, public opinion, etc., and make a decision. As far as that goes, Biden has so far broken with a very long-lasting economic orthodoxy in America that was the legacy of Obama, of Clinton, Bush, Trump, the idea that by basically introducing the idea that state intervention in the economy in a time of pretty desperate social need actually works. I'm from Europe. We do it all the time. You should try it. When it comes to, but of course, there's plenty of room for criticism, not just from a leftist perspective. We'll complain about everything. the climate plan and the jobs bill do have plenty of flaws. They don't really live up, even in some ways, to the standards of the people who promoted it. It's not very cohesive. The infrastructure plan doesn't really melt that well with the climate plan. The way that their high-speed rail project is very limited compared to how many roads they want to build. Well, building roads means you get more cars, and that doesn't really gel very well with the climate plan. But so we can talk about that. But yeah, I mean, sometimes liberals do things right. It's okay.
Okay, so I have a quick question for the leftists or whatever that I think would be helpful to ask. Is basically like oftentimes we bitch about how the right wing is like fiscally conservative when it's inconvenient to do so. And as far as I understand, inflation is basically like the printing of money in relation to economic activity. And as much as we want to pretend that we can just do what we've done with the stimulus, which I think was good, by the way, and necessary, we have seen some logistical shortages. Right now, when it comes to housing, I think housing is up 30%. I think the value of vehicles is up 30%. I think construction materials, some construction materials are up 200, 300%. And as far as I understand, I literally just talked to an MMT guy a few weeks ago, is that basically it's not necessarily the printing of money that's the problem. It's the printing of money in relation to like no economic activity. So are we willing to concede as a panel that basically you can't endlessly print money to solve problems, or that these things need to be balanced, or like is the right wing completely useless and we should just print whatever the fuck we want, whatever we want?
I don't think it's a question of like. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think it's just a matter of.
I don't think it's an MMTer's like job is going to be to look at everything through the lens of like printing money. But I mean, when you look at coming out of like a historic downturn in like the global supply chain, if you're going to see prices that are inflated, it's probably not inflation caused to monetary policy. It's probably inflation caused to like a failure in the supply chain. So like there have been factories all over the world that have had workers laid off that have like been closed for long periods of time, or that have had other problems or other shortages. And when that happens, it's going to drive up the cost of goods, especially coming out of a pandemic now when people are starting to buy things more than they were before. When these factories are trying to get the production back online, you're going to start to see prices be inflated. But economists are going to be worried to call that inflation until we've gotten like a few quarters through it to see where the prices ultimately end up.
Okay, at the risk of being productive on a Rumble panel, basically what that conversation boiled down to was the fact that that's been the case all of the time. Whether you're talking about the Weimar Republic, Venezuela, or any of these prior examples, it basically is a relation of like logistical breakdown in relation to printing of money supply. So I know that you're saying like it's the logistical issues, not the inflation, but that's basically was like the historical analysis that was presented to me, was that was always the case. And COVID, one second, almost done. And then COVID very specifically is basically like one of the most drastic downturns in economic activity. You're talking about like, I don't know, 30% of like the workforce basically going to a work from home or partial work model. We're talking about retail and restaurant kind of revolutionizing over the past 2 years. So I would say that we don't know what the fuck is going on, and we don't know what's going to happen. So all I'm looking for is a little bit of concession and nuance, and I'll leave it there.
Well, it's not so much
you can think about comparisons because you can think about.
DemonMama was trying to go in after. I'm going to give it to DemonMama.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, look, it's not just a matter of concessions or anything. Like printing money isn't the only way to reallocate funds. We have funds that go all over the place. We have a ton of money that goes into the U.S. military. We have a ton of money that is lost in tax cuts that have been made to the highest of the highest income earners in the country. We have taxes that have been cut based on the size of enormous companies like Amazon. These are ways that we can get the money that we need. But what we do know is that there's been that COVID has killed tons and tons of small businesses. COVID has killed employment. Like there's a retail worker shortage in America right now because it is so difficult to get everybody back in for things that are opening up. And of course, that's not even getting into talking about what happens if there's like a second wing of this pandemic with Delta variant, Lambda variant, whatever. The problem is that it's not just about printing money. Sure, that's one possible solution. There are many possible solutions. And I think the Dems need to be pushing very hard on that. Because here's the thing, if what you're saying is true, that there's logistical issues, well, the logistics has been knocked out. It seems to me that it would be essential this is the perfect time for the government to say, we need to jumpstart this logistics. We need to get things up and running again. We need to fund small businesses so that people can start making things again, so that people can start working again. We need to make sure that people have buffer so that they don't become homeless and lose their homes. That worsens the economy. Just so you know, like people who don't have a home, it's really hard for them to get a job or work. That's going to seriously impact people's abilities to get their businesses up running, especially if we're talking about corporations, like massive corporations who were able to weather the pandemic. And then they're going to have outdated hiring practices where they're not going to hire people because maybe you don't have the right level of experience or whatever. They're going to have shortages. So we seriously need the government to step in and go, we've experienced a global pandemic that has killed a shocking number of people. We need to jumpstart the economy. I don't care if it's done through printing money or if it's done through reallocating taxes or if it's done through moving funds from somewhere else. But the reality is that America is a country that's supposed to serve the people. We're supposed to be for the people.
Can I add on to that?
I'm gonna call a time on that because that went on for a while. I do want to throw it to
perfectly.
I'm gonna throw it to Xand and Loner because Loner did want to talk as well.
Yeah, so I agree mostly with DemonMama on that, but I think one of the things that people are missing out on is that a huge part of the pandemic was also a realization that certain industries are kind of outdated. I think the biggest example of this is movie theaters. You're seeing some movies being pushed into theaters and some people returning, especially as vaccines get rolled out more. But you're also seeing some areas where movies are not being put in theaters, and instead they're being viewed even more so on streaming services. I didn't go to a movie theater to watch the new Black Widow movie. I watched it on Disney Plus. So you're going to see a lot of movie theaters shutting down, people losing jobs from that. Not to mention a huge way the economy is fueled is by people spending. You got to spend, and that typically results in the economy growing. Unfortunately, right now, due to the pandemic, a lot of people are short on money, or they're hoarding it because they don't know what's coming. They want to make sure they can pay bills. If people have the money to be able to buy things, not just their basic, groceries that they need and whatnot, you're going to see the economy grow. A lot of people have been staying inside, saving their money. If they even have money, they might have lost their jobs. Stimulus bills are a good way of dealing with this, and I've not looked much into printing more money, but yeah.
I don't want to cut it.
I'm gonna block that cut in and throw it to Loner. I'm sorry.
Because every time when I hear people talking about this, I feel like it's always worth reminding people just how not very overwhelming a lot of this is. Like it's overwhelming in the sense that America hasn't really done anything like this since maybe the 60s. But like if you look at the comparison to other countries, like one of the things in this infrastructure plan is like that they said was groundbreaking is like 500,000 electric vehicle charging points. Well, compare that to Germany, much smaller country. They're going for 1 million.
Fine on Destinies. Okay.
So as far as comparing to other countries, like this isn't as dramatic as it might seem. And then I don't know, with inflation, then if there are inflationary pressures, then you have to maybe raise interest rates or God forbid raise taxes. And maybe that's why this kind of plan is starting with Biden kind of testing the waters, because there's going to be a big political risk there involved down the line. But it's not that. So far, it's pretty underwhelming.
I'm giving it to Sprouticus, and then I'm going to give it to Trihex, who hasn't talked in a while.
Moving it back a little
raising his hand?
There's a reason. DemonMama brings up all the people who aren't working, right? There's a reason people aren't working. It's because Biden has failed to do his job. Biden has failed to end the federal unemployment bonuses that people are getting. People are getting paid way too much to sit at home and to not be going to look for a job, and that is what is hurting the job market. What Biden needed to do was needed to end those benefits and start pushing people to go out and get a job. But the reason they're not is because they're comfortable getting money. They're comfortable not working a job, and they're just going to continue to get this extra money and not work a job until Biden ended it. Now that Biden did end it way later than he should have, states are still continuing to keep this going. States, even like Indiana, with the Rhino, who is the governor of Indiana, it's still going in Indiana. But this is the reason you see the shortage in job market. It's not because people don't need money. It's because there's too much money being sent by the government to these people to where they don't feel that they need to work.
Do you mind if I cut
Spartacus, I don't think that there's any people getting unemployment that are not getting a job because they think unemployment is enough. I don't think there's a lot of people.
I mean, that's just empirically false. Like the most.
It's not empirically false. It's actually.
If you look at
there's 4 people talking at the same time. Okay, Trihex.
Well, actually, before I even clap on that, let's go way your earlier point here about like the crisis at the border wall and all that, bro. I think you're consuming way too much Fox News propaganda, because what you're really rooting here is the idea that if like ex-politicians not visit the border to see the crisis going on right there, that obviously they don't care. Subordinates can't go, traverse there, visit there, and then relay information to the appropriate people so they can carry out the agenda required necessary to what they were told in the first place. But I even go back further because whenever, because what the framing you gave there is one that's reminiscent to me of like whenever someone like AOC visited the border detention centers and cried and was like really distraught from what she was witnessing. that got played up in partisan mainstream media outlets as like look at them doing their thing now. So honestly, I feel like what you're doing there is the same shit that you see elsewhere. Whenever it's the side you want to hate on, doing it as well. So I think that point was completely garbage. And then going into the whole thing,
I do want to say you're getting a lot of points deducted right now for terrible fucking mic quality.
I am.
You're the wrong mic. It's like that. Yeah.
Ooh. I'm sorry. Fuck, no one told me.
I'll bring it back to you after somebody else grabs
it. Yeah, my bad.
So Trihex, you're gonna try. I mean, he kind of came after me, but go ahead. He kind of came after me, but go ahead.
Yeah, but you addressed me directly. I just want to address that. So first of all, like this stuff about like, oh yeah, people who are already struggling and unemployed, they'll just go get a job if you force them to go out. That is just ridiculous. First of all, that doesn't happen in any other country. Like Canada was giving a universal basic income, and their economy had, people were still spending, people were still buying food. It's very stabilizing. The idea that like you make more money on unemployment than you do with a job, it's just ridiculous. People aren't going out because of a couple reasons. One, they can't find the work. Two, they can't actually get the job because of whatever reason. Or three, they're still scared of the pandemic, or their workplace no longer exists anymore. Like this is just like literally like stock, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like I don't feel like this is a serious argument. The idea like, oh yeah, if you give them unemployment during a global pandemic where over 600,000 Americans have died, that it's just like it should reflect on them. This idea of like secret welfare queens sucking up everything, that's so ridiculous. This is fear mongering. It doesn't have any basis in reality. And
as a real quick thing,
hold off of that. No, because I have a point. Another point that I want to say. Something that I wanted to respond to.
I gotta give you 15 seconds, and then we gotta move it on because we only have 3 minutes left in the round.
I wanted to address something specific that Zan brought up, which is, it'd be amazing to see something that we had in America for a very long time: public arts projects. You want to get people spending, you want to get people out doing things in the economy again. Have the government fund and put some stuff out there. Movie theaters are gone under. Let's get that stuff.
Never once did I suggest.
That sounds cool.
After Sprout, we're going to Destiny, then Trihex, and we're ending the round.
Never once did I suggest that the extra unemployment benefits wasn't needed during the coronavirus.
Public arts
we are in the recovery stage. It needed to be ended far before Biden actually ended it. And actually, where you see a lot of people not going to jobs, a lot of people that are seeking for jobs, it's low-skilled jobs.
I think just one.
And these low-skilled jobs,
I think
in some states, in most states, they're making more money off of the federal unemployment benefits than they would be if they actually went to work. So the idea that you're saying that people aren't doing this, it's fear-mongering. It's not. It's not fear-mongering at all. And going back to Trihex, talking about the border wall, or the border. So Kamala Harris was in charge of the border. It's been precedent for decades that presidents and whoever's in charge of whatever goes down and checks it out with their own eyes, not send someone else down to come back and report to them. That's just been precedent, especially when you're going through a crisis like we were going through the border crisis. But not only that, but Biden actually reversed a lot of what was going on, right? So Biden actually made the border a lot worse than it was during Trump.
Sprout, we gotta cut you off. We're running out of time. I have to throw the Trihex Destiny. You both got like 30 seconds max.
Okay, whatever you were talking about earlier is a bunch of nonsense here. Ultimately, it's inadequate wages going on in the first place right there. They've always been trashed. They've been stagnant for a very, very long time now, since, 2009. Increasing the minimum wages is an overwhelmingly popular thing. It's even been popular in Republican Utopia, Florida. And that has failed to be done because too many moderate Democrat senators are pieces of shit, obviously.
Cinema,
and I can
Joe
on both ends
Manchin.
on that spectrum completely here.
Yeah.
And obviously, you should be pro some kind of injection of wealth into like this declining, shrinking middle class, because the poverty floor in this country is really, really bad. And long story short, it's really, really bad for the economy overall when you have a declining, shrinking middle class altogether. Just kind of keeping some bullet points there, as I'm short on time.
Okay, gotta throw it over to Destiny.
There's a lot of rumors about, firstly, Canada didn't have a UBI. Secondly, there's a lot of points being brought up about how unemployment insurance might be causing an increase in unemployment in states. A ton of economists have dug into that data. They've looked at like different industries that are affected by unemployment insurance, different industries that aren't, different states that have ended it early. Most economists believe that there's like a marginal impact, like a very small impact on unemployment insurance on the current unemployment rate. So the idea that UI is going to be people working is probably not true.
Yeah, Trihex
to bring it back to like, has Biden done a good job or not a good job? The amount of stimulus that the United States has poured into its citizens over the entire coronavirus pandemic period has been higher than I think any other countries in the world except for like Japan. We spent a ton of stimulus in this country. A lot of that came from the Biden coronavirus relief bill, which I think is awesome. That is a form of UBI to people that have children that file for their child tax credit early. I think it's one of the coolest things Biden's done.
Just to get your UBI or your child tax credit every month. If they have dependent children.
Round's over. I have already been told by the judges who's getting kicked out for this round. So, 3 votes. Oh, 2 of them actually. Wait, let me wait for Vadim.
Wait, I missed the rules. Who votes? Does chat vote or there's
no? Fuck chat.
Okay, fuck chat. Heard that.
True.
Fuck chat. Yeah, I don't trust chat. Well, with 2 votes in, I don't really need to wait for the 3rd vote. We already have 2 votes in for the same person. I'm sorry to say, and Vadim, please send it through Twitter DMs in the future. American Nacho, I'm sorry to say, you are out of here. I gotta say, you have gone the furthest in Hippy Dippy history with saying absolutely nothing in a contestant's history. It was beautiful. It was beautiful, and I think it was a huge statement on centrism, and I love it.
Yeah, true.
Okay. You really are like doing nothing. I'm sorry. See you later.
Okay. Like that.
Wonderful. Okay, next person. Aircraft Sparky has entered the arena. A conservative commentator on Twitch and YouTube. Okay, you guys can go to the next topic. It is the death penalty. Should it be abolished? Should it be kept? You may begin.
It should be abolished, and it is on the onus is on those that support the death penalty to prove that it provides any useful function to society. I've looked into it. It does not. It seems it has no effect in deterring crime. It doesn't seem to make people feel as though justice has been served. I think the utility caused by the likelihood of innocent people being falsely found guilty and given the death penalty is bad. I think that the cost of it is far more than housing a prisoner for the rest of their lives. There is no reason whatsoever to have the death penalty. It is stupid.
Agreed and
yes,
agreed.
I couldn't agree more with.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, I think that.
So everybody disagrees?
Yes.
What's that? No, wait. Do we have people who are on with the death penalty? Yeah. Look,
yes.
I don't think the state should have the ability to declare the future life or death of somebody who's already been apprehended and has been imprisoned or whatever. I have problems with we could go further into the prison system, but we don't even need to talk about that. The death penalty doesn't do anything for us. It's barbaric. It makes us look terrible. And in addition, it leads to a lot of very questionable situations. I mean, we've had, I think many people on this panel are probably aware of the extended torment that certain death row inmates have had when their execution goes incorrectly. As it turns out, there's no real humane way to kill somebody, and there's a lot of room for that to go wrong, and that is sickening and disgusting.
Well, DemonMama, the big thing to point out there, I don't mean to interrupt, but I feel like this is worth bringing up, is that a lot of the time there can be lack of access to the proper chemicals used for lethal injection, which is mostly what you use now, and so they revert back to older or not as useful chemicals, which can result in a prolonged and much more painful death. Not to mention, and I guess we can get to this in a moment, but I mean, there's tons of cases of people who were apprehended by the police, who were falsely identified by witnesses, because sometimes when a witness sees something traumatic happening, like a murder, they may misidentify. The police can bully and coerce false confessions out of suspects. There's a lot of cases that can occur and have occurred of the wrong person getting the death penalty. I believe 165 or more people since 1976 have been exonerated after being on death row, and those are just the people who were found to be innocent.
Isn't that a good thing, though? Isn't that a good thing that 165 people who are on death row were found to be exonerated because the courts actually did their jobs with the appeals process and found out that these people actually weren't guilty and
what about the ones that
they weren't deserving?
If you found 156 poisoned jelly beans in your bowl,
I want to hear him finish.
So you started this off saying I'm making that people who are pro the death penalty have the onus to do this because they have to prove it. You would then therefore, following your own logic, have to prove that there was a large amount of people that died from the death penalty that were innocent. So I'm going to look forward to you coming through with that thought process.
Spartacus, if you had a bowl of jelly beans, you referred directly to me. Wait, DemonMama, he referred directly to me. Let me respond.
It was directed. Wait, it was directed towards Xanderhal. Xanderhal should respond. Yeah.
Okay.
But
All right.
we got to make it quick because a lot of people.
It's very quick. Spartacus, if you had a bowl full of jelly beans and you pulled a bunch of them out and you found that 152 of those jelly beans were poison, would you feel very confident in continuing to eat that bowl of jelly beans? Because that's basically what you're advocating for here in a more simplified way. If there was 156 people that were found to be innocent, that were taken off of death row, do you think there's a lot of people that haven't been found? Not to mention, that's not even getting into the fact that once you kill a suspect, you now have gotten completely rid of the ability for that suspect to contribute more to the case to find out if there were accomplices, someone who made them do it. I think there was a case that Sean talked about in his video on the death penalty from the UK in Wales, where a guy took the fall for his neighbor who murdered his wife and child because he was trying to protect that neighbor and didn't know that it wasn't an accident. There's so many cases where executing the person who's the suspect gets rid of any ability to continue an investigation into the case.
So
I think
I
that's like
want to build off that, please.
What?
Listen,
Okay,
I just want to build off.
We got
this.
20 seconds.
That's fine. I only need 20 seconds. Listen. So this is, again, you misunderstood what Zan's argument was in the beginning. You have to prove why we should kill people. And what benefit that provides to society. Because as it is right now, it doesn't seem to be providing any benefit, and it's incredibly expensive. The appeals process, holding somebody on death row, is ridiculously expensive to our entire country, in addition to the moral issues that are brought up with the death penalty.
Okay, I feel like most of the argument.
Okay.
I feel like most of the arguments that are brought up in against the death penalty don't really work. The jelly bean analogy doesn't work. Would you eat one jelly bean or would you eat a jelly bean out of 150 if one was poison? I mean, like, we essentially make this deal every single time we get into a car and drives, every single time we get into an airplane and go somewhere. Like, we make this deal all the time. In terms of whether or not it's barbaric, I mean, like, it's the death penalty, of course. But if you've decided as a society that you want to punish somebody that's committed certain capital offenses with death, I mean, barbarism probably isn't that far away from what you're trying to do. In terms of, like, could it go wrong? Yeah, a lot of things could go wrong. That's not an argument not to do something. And in terms of being expensive, I mean, again, that's a societal decision to make. I'm opposed to the death penalty because I think that it fundamentally betrays what the justice system should be about, which is rehabilitation. When you have an idea that you can commit an offense that's so heinous that, like, you ought to be killed or removed from society, I think that type of mentality guides, like, the entire way that we view the criminal justice system. And I think that we should change, like, the idea of, like, punishment or retribution into something different, like rehabilitation. But I find that most of the arguments that people use that are opposed to the death penalty end up just, like, not really working because they don't really make much sense. We've gone through the jelly bean one, we've gone through the, like, is it barbaric? Like, something else that people will say is that, like, oh, well, life in prison is actually more cruel than the death penalty, so that's why we shouldn't have the death penalty. It's better punishment. Okay, well, what about the people now that have to suffer for life in prison who were innocent instead of those that could have been executed, which would be better? Like, I find that most of these arguments just don't make any sense.
So can I give some
Destiny, can I respond? Can I respond to Destiny's point? Can I respond to Destiny's point about the
Xanderhal, you've interrupted me twice trying to respond.
Well, okay.
Sorry, Spartacus. I love you, buddy.
Okay, so there's a lot of people talk to. Everybody just tried to talk. Raise your hand quick, okay? I haven't heard Counterpoints talk, and I haven't heard Aircraft Sparky talk. So I think we're gonna have to talk to them.
Okay, so I'm going to give you some Bailey instead of some Mott. So there are certain crimes that I think should be punishable by death. Those include infanticide, terrorism, and torture murder. If you were to look at these as anecdotal cases, basically as individualistic cases, I almost guarantee you I could convince some of y'all that these motherfuckers deserve to die, basically. I also think that you can raise the evidentiary standard to beyond a shadow of a doubt. Doshkar Sarnaev is an example of that. Anders Breivik is another example of that. People who we know beyond a shadow of a doubt committed the crimes that they committed. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Doshkar Sarnaev is the Boston bomber. He killed, I believe, an 8-year-old amongst his victims and maimed dozens of other people. I believe Anders Breivik killed around, like, it was between like 100 and like 200 people with bombings and executions. Some of those people he literally executed right in front of each other, simultaneously moving on and on. Last time I got into this debate, I was told that I was not allowed to describe the crimes that people committed, which I think is like, I get it's like, Twitch TOS or whatever, but that's insane to me that we can have a conversation about whether or not death is a valid punishment for a certain crime, but we can't talk about the kinds of crimes that we're talking about where death should be administered. So basically I said that we don't have to go with the current standard with which, innocence is basically, up to doubt. We can go with beyond a shadow of a doubt thing. So then to overcome some of your objections, you said no humane way to kill somebody. I refuse to believe that. There's probably like pounds and pounds and tons of heroin on the fucking street. Let's go get a fucking purity test and send them out on a fucking OD.
That's how I'd want to go.
Like, that's an easy fucking solution. Administrative costs. Again, if we move to the beyond the shadow of a doubt statute, then we basically don't have to have as sincere of like administrative costs to retry the case dozens and dozens and dozens of times. We can literally say, did this motherfucker do it? Yes, he did. There's the 99.9999999% evidence that they did do it, including their own admissions and digital forensics and all that kind of stuff. Sorry, buddy, you fucking killed a 8-year-old. Blap. Here's some heroin. And then as fine as okay,
why we should
wait.
Final point. Social utility. Okay. Final point, social utility. Anders Breivik bitched about having a fucking PS2 after murdering 200 people and said that was cruel and inhumane. Fuck that motherfucker. He deserves to be in the ground.
DemonMama.
Okay. Yeah, so you still haven't provided an argument for why we should do it. I do also agree with Destiny, though I think that the argument that like the death penalty sets the standard for the rest of our prison system and our justice system. I think that's a valid argument, but I will note that does basically boil down to a barbarity argument. Our prison system is ultimately barbaric. It doesn't work towards justice. It works or rehabilitation. It works instead towards punitive solutions that often don't even work. And this is the thing. Like people say, oh, well, it's more torturous for people who have to live in life. Well, maybe we shouldn't be torturing them. They've been apprehended. Maybe we should try to make a genuine effort to understand what led to people to be in these places, keep them away from where they can't hurt anybody. But why? What benefit? There's been nobody has actually been able to put out what benefit is there from killing these people, from having the state have the ability to summarily execute somebody. This is basic. You have to answer that question, and it hasn't been answered. It simply hasn't.
All right, I want to respond to counterpoints really quickly.
Aircraft.
First of all, there are just some crimes that are just so heinous. The only way there is no reform for it. It is nothing but retribution that needs to be had. I'm looking at child murderers. I'm looking at people who do adult things with children. Yes, I believe that they should get the axe, and no, it should not have to be something clean and so humane. I am all for get the guillotine, let it drop. Gravity does its work and is cheap, recyclable. Man, just think of all the great things that can happen. When you look at it, there are just some crimes that are just so heinous that there is no chance for reform. We're not going to let them back out to the public. Why should people even bother with feeding them anymore? Look, if you're a mass murderer, if you kill 30 people, chances are you're not going to be reformed, nor are you going to get out of prison. That is heinous. Now, there are states that do not allow the death penalty, and that's all well and good. Look, the people have made their decision there. But in the states where it does exist, allow it to exist. It is a state-by-state deal. States' rights is a real thing, and the people have decided.
This guy's trying to go the libertarian route to justify the death penalty.
Back the electric chair. I don't care if they suffer when they die, just as long as they die and the world is rid of them. That's what it comes down to.
So I'm sure. Hold on, let me respond. I raised my hand like 5 minutes ago. I raised my hand like 5 minutes ago.
Stop. Yeah, Lonabox has not gone yet, and I want to make sure he has a chance. I don't want to nacho.
Me next.
My guardian angel. So there was one argument there, and it was retribution. That's kind of what you just said. Retribution for who exactly? The victims, the relatives of the victims? Because you all said that you obviously don't want innocent people getting executed. So that means typically what we have now is people have to stay on death row for a very, very long time before we actually determine 100% whether or not they were guilty. I think there's been research done on this. I can probably find it, that this does not provide any comfort or closure to the families of victims because it's an ongoing process. It is limbo. It's indeterminate. It's stressful. It doesn't provide the thing you're saying it provides, and that's actually the only argument that
actually I didn't claim that it gives closure to the family at all. I didn't claim that at all because
so that was the response. That's the response to counterpoints. That was towards counterpoints. I think I want to respond to both of you guys really quickly. Sorry, what's your name on the top left?
Aircraft Sparky, how you doing, buddy?
Aircraft Sparky and counterpoints really quickly. So I think both of your claims are downright un-American and ineffectual. The idea of our justice system, the idea of the American, you can laugh if you want to, but I mean, it's a simple fact.
Laughing.
The American justice system, the entire idea around it is that emotion is completely separated from the court proceedings. When you're being tried, you don't have there's a reason why you have an unbiased jury of your peers. You don't want the types of people who have an emotional bias against the person who's on trial to be punishing them. them. That's not what our justice system is about. Not to mention, I already brought this up earlier, but I guess we can dive into it further if you'd like. Once you've executed a suspect, they can no longer talk. There's been, and just like Connor Points talked about before, cases where someone was found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I think it happened in Florida back in, I think it was like the 80s, where a couple came out of a hotel and the wife was shot. The husband identified a person. The police interrogated that person. The person confessed. Guess what ended up happening? One, the husband missaw, and the person who confessed, guess what happened, was bullied into it by the police. This happens plenty. It was found without a reasonable doubt in court, and you know what happened? Because that person had a confession bullied out of them, the police did not go after a warrant to search the person's house to see if there was any evidence that they actually did it. Turned out he didn't do it, and it was all on the police. Our justice system, unfortunately, is flawed. There will be cases where someone is found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt at all, and it's just not the case. And you don't want to be one of those cases.
I don't want to. Like I said before,
very short. Wait. I don't care because the round's over.
Oh, it's gonna tickle some balls.
This is the 15-minute round.
You actually brought up a good point, though.
Yeah, my great point is that the round's over and we all stop talking.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding,
Dylan's
ding,
chat's
ding.
good.
So I'm getting the votes in right now. The first vote, I'll actually read the votes out. It's more suspenseful. The first vote is for Sprouticus to be knocked out. The second vote is for Trihex to be knocked out. And the last vote is also for Trihex to be knocked out.
No!
Trihex, it
Sorry,
seems
bro.
that the lack of talking this round was the decider.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Trihex.
It's all good.
Still a beautiful man.
It's all good.
Yeah.
You want to know how you're the real winner? You got to play the new. You got to play Skyward Sword. Before I did. I didn't get the remaster today. I pre-ordered it too.
No, it's all good. My Joy-Cons broke, so I ended up playing with my Pro Controller, which like really sucks for that game. But you know, it's all good. It's all good. The only thing I was gonna have before I dip out here was I was gonna say that I was gonna make sure that we in the beginning here, we're gonna challenge our framing, that we were not gonna conflate here support or against the death penalty automatically being indicative of whether we are for or against life in prison or assisted suicide. Because I feel like oftentimes the three things kind of get automatically conflated together. And I was gonna hop in here and tier that, but it was already so heated from the very jump of some like subjective stuff altogether. But it's all good, y'all. I gotta go to bed. I got gym tomorrow anyway. So keep lifting. I'll see y'all next time.
You have a good one, Trihex.
Eat me.
Have a good one.
Yeet. Okay. The next person is Hunter Avalone enters the ring. Hunter Avalone. Wonderful. Now, the next topic, and I only released the first two topics because I wanted to make sure that the rest of them would be spicy surprises. Because we don't have surprise guests, so we at least need surprise topics. This one's gonna be an easy one, and I think we can all come together. The issue is mental health, specifically self-diagnosis.
All right, I'm getting the popcorn out on this one. I'll butt in once or twice, but I'm getting the popcorn out for this one, baby.
Okay, you may begin.
Self-diagnosis.
Look,
I can open on this.
I can make an executive decision to let DemonMama open on it.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, self-diagnosis is super, super important. It is usually the first step that people take before they get a formal diagnosis. Very, very valuable process. Many mental health professionals recommend this with regard to mental health. In America, a lot of people grin and bear it. They think that there's something wrong with them, but they don't look at it as a matter of mental health. They look at it as a moral failing. Being able to recognize in yourself the symptoms of various conditions is incredibly important to actually being able to get treatment and care for those issues that's right for you. Now, mental health is complicated. In America, a lot of people don't have health coverage. And in fact, good on Biden for pushing Medicare to have mental health coverage, which it is going to do if his package gets passed. We'll see, which would be great. But a lot of people don't have mental health coverage in America. They might be looking at a $1,000 bill just to see a therapist or just to see a psychiatrist. Being able to recognize in yourself the symptoms of a potential mental disorder is incredibly important to having a good prognosis for that disorder. And not every single disorder requires medication or structured therapy. Some people, like say if you have ADHD, maybe you just find out that you need to change your habits a little bit and you're doing a whole lot better. That is a fantastic and important process.
But when you
that's my stance on self-diagnosis.
But with self-diagnosis, I agree. It can be an important tool for going towards a medical diagnosis. But when you put it in the terms of it is arguably more important than a medical diagnosis is asinine to me. I don't know how this is more important than a medical diagnosis. To go as far as to say the only when you go to a world where doctors say that are the only people that can say you have a mental health disorder is a world full of asylums and gatekeeping is absolutely insane. Doctors are the ones that go through 8 years of college for this. Doctors are the ones that are trained to understand what mental health disorders are and which ones are which, because it can be very easy to misconflate one mental health disorder for another, such as you can think you have depression when actually you have anxiety. And you're not going to fix your depression and anxiety in the same way. So
I think that the thing that we're not acknowledging here is the fact that.
All right,
who's talking?
Okay. Yeah, a lot of you will talk.
Can I respond to that? Was directly at me.
Okay, yeah. DemonMama, I'll let DemonMama respond, but we got to keep this short because these rounds are getting shorter and shorter, okay?
Yeah, thank you. Doctors are also the ones who lobotomized Rose Kennedy. I think I got the name right. Doctors also did lobotomies.
This is bad. DemonMama, I have to really disagree.
You can't go anti-doctor.
This is anti-intellectualism.
Excuse me, please. If you
don't yell over me when I'm trying to respond to you.
Excuse me.
DemonMama, you're better than this.
Wait a minute.
She's not.
No, she isn't.
Excuse me. Wait, is this
but seriously, this is anti-intellectualism. This is like when Lauren Southern came on and told me that. This is like when Lauren.
Didn't even get to finish my point.
All right.
I didn't even get to start.
All right, go.
My response.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No. This is not anti-intellectual. This is recognizing that there are flaws in our medical system. There are great injustices that have been carried out by our medical system. That doesn't mean that I'm anti. I've literally never once advocated for anti-doctor and anti-doctor anything.
But you are right now. That's what you're doing.
Hunter, I understand, but you need to let me finish a point. I know you're very, very ready to jump at whatever straw man you have summed up about my position.
Wait a minute.
Really,
I don't have a straw man of anything.
We have
we don't. Okay. I gotta say, we don't have a limited time, so I'm gonna give DemonMama like 30 seconds and nobody interrupt her. Okay, go.
Yeah, I am never once have stated anything that is
spicy.
anti-doctor. All I've pointed out is that there are problems in our system for a very long time. Until just about 10 years ago, it was considered a mental condition to be trans, just to be trans. In fact, within I think it was about 30 years, it was considered a mental disorder to be gay. We recognize these are errors. Our medical system is not perfect. The idea that the medical system is beyond reproach or that we can't point that out is absurd. Now that is truly anti-intellectual, and doctors will tell you this. In fact, if you go to any major mental health.
Done. 30 seconds is over. Okay. I'm gonna throw it to Destiny because I.
All right.
Okay, I'm gonna make it program. So first of all, self-diagnosis is not the first step to anything. That's not true. No doctor will tell you that. Recognizing symptoms in yourself is not the same as diagnosing a disease in yourself. This is a crucial error that a lot of people make. A self-diagnosis involves you finding some disease that you think you have, and it might lead you into starting to misidentify symptoms because you want to identify with something or you think you identify with something. Self-diagnosis is absolutely not the first step to anything. It's recognizing symptoms in yourself and then giving that handful of symptoms to a medical professional that can help diagnose you if they feel it's appropriate for some condition, help you get treatment for it. Many mental health professionals do not recommend self-diagnosis. That is absolutely not true. You will not find a single medical professional that will tell you, oh yeah, you should definitely diagnose yourself with a disease and then give that disease to the doctor when you go to talk to them. The idea that many people don't have mental health coverage, that it costs $1,000 to see a therapist, $1,000 is really high generally for a therapist. Yeah?
Destiny, we gotta move. I'm
sorry.
Yeah,
okay, go. That's fine.
Yeah, let me go next. I've been
wait,
chopping at the bit.
Everybody shut the fuck up, okay? I didn't say anybody go to Xanderhal.
All right. Yeah.
You
so
the host?
I think what we're
no, Xanderhal. I was fucking asking you. Okay.
No, I'm not the host. I think you're the host.
Yes. Okay. So we're gonna throw it to counterpoints, okay? Because he had his hand up for the longest period of time. But I also want to say this topic's gonna go on for a few rounds, okay?
Very cool. All right, awesome. Yeah, so basically, as the enlightened centrist here, I think I can split the difference. So I think what DemonMama is saying, and excuse me if I strawman, is basically that being aware and cognizant of symptoms and being aware and cognizant of different diseases can help you basically figure out what the problem is. It's very Jordan Peterson of DemonMama to say that you need to pick yourself up and you need to analyze your situation. You need to imagine hell below you and heaven above you, and you need to strive towards the ideals of your society by identifying your problems and then working them through them slowly. I know DemonMama DemonMama is a massive fan of Jordan Peterson. So that's basically like, I really appreciate that about her. I think the term, hold on, we're almost there. So I think the term that we're getting hung up on is diagnosis. And I think the problem here is that diagnosis often involves, correct me if I'm wrong, basically involves coming to a conclusion about a series of symptoms about a disease that basically would confer all of these symptoms. I think that if we were to split the difference here, and this will be my final point, is basically recognizing the symptoms and being informed on the symptoms so you can feed that to a professional so you can get an accurate diagnosis would be the difference between these two perspectives, and I'll yield right there.
Okay.
I think that a lot of...
Wait. They've already been responding to me, and it's
you were
really
responding. Yeah, that's fine.
I haven't even
so many words.
DemonMama's already talked like 2 minutes this round. Let other people get responses in.
Wait a minute. That's not my problem. You all chose to make this about me. This is like
the opening statement. I want the next
self-diagnosed.
Well,
I
still have to talk to DemonMama about
this topic is because of DemonMama.
The longer we debate about who's going next, the less time there is in the round. And the less time there is in the round, the less chance you have to actually speak. More likely, you're going to get voted out. And if you piss me off, I'm going to get executive decision and vote you out myself, okay? So I just want to make that clear for anybody who's pissing me off, Xander. So we're going to throw it to Hunter.
Yes. Okay, so DemonMama, I do understand what you're coming from about self-diagnosing.
God, imagine I get executively kicked off.
What you are doing is anti-intellectualism, and at very least, you are empowering anti-intellectualism. Because when you bring up these examples of doctors making mistakes, what you're doing there is you're trying to validate a broader narrative that doctors cannot be trusted, and that is anti-intellectual. Second of all, self-diagnosing can, in very many ways, be actually a detriment to your health. For example, I have an example here. Bipolar and depression both have very similar symptoms, but if you self-diagnose yourself for depression when you actually have bipolar, it could make your bipolar even worse. So self-diagnosing and understanding your symptoms, being aware, that's fine. But the actual process of diagnosing, that's dependent on a doctor based on your qualitative symptoms or based on your qualitative experience and a symptom, the symptoms that they already understand.
Okay, DemonMama's going to respond to this because that's two people in a row. I do want to give it time to respond.
Yeah, by the way, I have like a number of studies here I can cite if we want to get really into that, but we're limited on time. So the funny thing here is, first of all, no, I'm not anti-intellectual. The idea that you cannot critique or you cannot point out massive flaws in our medical system, that is categorically anti-intellectual. Science is based.
But that's not what you're doing.
Excuse me. Science is based on challenging these things, even sometimes from an activist perspective, saying, hey, there's a problem here. Categorizing being trans as mentally ill, categorizing being gay as mentally ill. These are mistakes. These are mistakes that are caused by bias and ideology that can get into our medical system and they can ingrain themselves very well. You have to be able to challenge that and provide an argument. This is not anti-intellectual. This is the core.
This is why it's anti-intellectual. The reason. I'm not done. I'm going to respond.
Come on, Demon. I know. I understand. We're gonna have multiple rounds to do this. Okay, this is gonna be like three rounds. Okay, so let's let the DemonMama finish. Thorns and Sparky. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some sort of semantic thing as to whether people think that a self-diagnosis is final. I don't know what this is referencing to. I've never said. First of all, not even doctors give final diagnoses. If there's an issue with doctors give diagnoses all the time that they later change. This is a medical fact. You cannot contest this. Uncontestable. Doctors change their diagnosis all the time when new information arises. A self-diagnosis is just that first step. Now, if you want to call it something else,
that's only one half of your argument.
I don't. Stop up.
Excuse me. I know. I again, Hunter, I can't help but feel like.
Please. Okay, we're moving on. Okay, aircraft. I'm sorry. Like, if it's gonna be like every time I interrupt somebody, I know that I know you're acting this way. Like, we can't. But it's gonna. These rounds are very short and concise. Okay, and I know maybe Twitch streamers are the best before that. We have to do that. Aircraft, then loner.
Look, I'm trying to get the best, most generous interpretation of what you said, DemonMama. I've watched your video, and I've actually watched the man right below me's response to it. And look, I understand what you're saying. Look, if you are aware enough to understand what's going on, you should go get help, go see a doctor, and a doctor will actually help you come to the actual true diagnosis. But to sit there and claim that you self-diagnose, I understand your argument with the whole trans thing, because a lot of people don't get the chance to go to the doctor and they identify as trans before they are diagnosed as trans. Okay, I get that. That's rhetorical stuff. But when it comes down to it, there's tons of mental conditions that people do not understand fully. In fact, I had to go get some help for some counseling post-war, and I didn't even know there was anything wrong. It was my wife that told me, "Hey, look, you changed since you come back." And I moped around for about 8 or 9 months, and had it not been for a doctor actually sitting down, breaking down everything, I would have never known there was anything wrong because, well, I mean, it is what it is. So I think it was framed. I think your argument was framed wrong. I understand in the most generous sense of what you were trying to say. I'm not going to say you're 100% wrong, but I just think the wording that you did just made it seem a little, just not good.
Okay, but see, I hear where you're coming
Sparky.
from.
I hate it when you just can't get that transgender diagnosis. But wait, can I respond to him really quick, Dylan? I haven't talked much.
I said loner box. We're
Can
gonna
I
give the loner,
jump in
then we
first?
have to end. Yeah, loner box. Then we have to end the round. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really follow
didn't get
this
to
drama
talk
at all
there.
because I don't hate myself, but I'll just go with what I've heard from here. So, like, yeah, self-diagnosis, just as a broad term, I can see the idea there because it's like, if you go to a doctor and say like, yeah, I think I'm depressed, that's kind of like a self-diagnosis.
I
And
hope
doctors
I don't get kicked for that.
inevitably, like,
I tried to
it
butt
is
my
a
way in so
science,
many
but
times.
they don't scan your brain. They just ask you about your feelings, and a self-diagnosis can be a feeling.
I think it's
so,
Connor,
and,
Aircraft, Sparky.
I've read Foucault. I know that
Spartacus,
there's weird
Orlando
power
Bucks this
relations
round.
going on between doctors and ordinary
they're the
people
ones on the chopping
sometimes,
block.
but it's like, with psychology, that you can say that like the first psychologists, were child abusers and cokeheads and all that shit. The DSM was just a group of doctors shouting diagnoses at each other and filling in a book like on the fly. But it's come along since then. You could actually make that criticism of all medicine. So you could say, I don't know, self-diagnosed, but like it's always, your diagnosis is not going to be 99.999% of the time as informed as the doctors. And although it's a power relation, I think it's a healthy one generally.
Okay,
that's fair. The good thing
the
is
vote,
that I've
the
never
person
claimed
voted. The
anything.
person. End of the round. Person getting voted out. First vote is for Sproutigus. Again. The second vote is for Aircraft Sparky. The third vote is for Aircraft Sparky. I'm sorry, Aircraft.
We safe.
This plane is
Another round
crashed.
down.
Hey, it's all good. Thank you for having me. And yeah, good talking to y'all.
You have a good one.
Have a good one.
Okay, so we're gonna throw it back over to Zan. Then it's gonna go to Demon.
All right, so I think that there is definitely some utility in being able to, I guess, start to think about what issues you might be dealing with psychologically. I think there's a huge problem with people misunderstanding psychological conditions in this country. A lot of, especially young people who aren't super aware of it, may have depression and confuse that for BPD. That's very common, and it is very hard to get your hands on somebody who can help you get a formal diagnosis for a medical condition. But I do think there's a lot of utility in that. If you find yourself waking up every morning feeling like shit, you've got no motivation, maybe it is worth considering. Maybe you've got depression. What should I do about that? How can I help with that? But at the same time, you should always take the word of a doctor or medical professional, or multiple, over your own self-diagnosis that may be what you found on the internet. And I don't think anybody here, like DemonMama or whatever, disagrees with that, but there's some hands up.
Can I go? I have to go to adult shit real quick.
Does DemonMama disagree with that?
Wait, okay. Counter, I'm gonna throw the counter then Demon because counter hasn't talked in a little bit, so I think it's only fair. Okay. Counter.
Okay. So the definition is the identification of nature of an illness or other by examination of the symptoms. I could understand if we were to split the difference through this definition, then basically Demon Mom would be saying, analyze the symptoms, try to come up with a diagnosis, not because you basically like want to self-diagnose, but because you want to start analyzing the problem. And Xanderhal, I think what you said is very similar to what Jordan Peterson said. Or like, basically see yourself as an agent of order in a world of chaos, basically start from scratch, analyze the things that you can control and the things that you can't control. And then basically like, move up from there. So I really appreciate everybody coming out and standing Dr. Jordan Peterson in this conversation. With that, I have to go.
Jordan Peterson's right on some things. Don't get me wrong. I think that absolutely cleaning your room. Hey, listen, I will stand by Jordan Peters' statement that you should clean your room and it'll make you feel a little bit better to the day I die. I feel great after I clean my fucking room. Of course, yeah. Analyzing yourself and what you're going through. If you're feeling like shit, then it's probably because you've got some stuff going on. Try to find a medical professional to help you, but there's ways that you can, without needing to spend money or go out of your way to find a medical professional, that you can analyze your mental health and help improve it. Absolutely.
Okay. I gotta go to some adult shit.
Shut up. Xander, I'm proud of you for cleaning out your cum socks. Now we're throwing it over to Demon Mama.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's really funny because everybody here has sort of been fighting a straw man of what they think my position is. I really wonder why that might have happened. But yeah, so it's really interesting. We have tons, and like we have an entire massive market that is based off of off of
Let's just hope no one uses my cum sock
even
for a murder.
Going to the point of Walmart. You can go into
evidence.
Walmart and you can buy yeast infection medication because you can self-diagnose a yeast infection. Yeah, wow, amazing. It's almost like we actually do trust people to some degree to self-diagnose. Now, it's interesting. People have come up with all these weird strawmen that I've never said, literally never once said avoid a doctor, literally never once said like self-med or any of these things. You've been coming up with the most extreme examples because you need me to look bad, because you know, and everybody here knows, that self-diagnosis is a thing that normally happens, that understanding these things is essential. And not only that, but again, I have study after study after study here. I can drop them in the chat if you want to, that shows that patients that are more informed about themselves, their potential diagnosis, there's a potential final diagnosis, which is never final. No diagnosis is final. Even with cancer, it's not final. You could find something that's totally different. But this increases their outcomes. Self-diagnosis is a natural part. Now, if you want to try and split hairs and say, we don't want to call it self-diagnosis or whatever, that's fine. But this stuff, like, I don't know, I think it was Destiny who earlier this week, maybe even yesterday, said that it's like, it's like collecting Pokemon or something like that. I've literally never said anything like this. And I would appreciate people actually engage with my arguments instead of engaging in like extremely weird, like character assassination, weird.
Just one quick question, a clarifying question.
And Destiny.
I really want to know, what is your position on when it comes to self-diagnosing and like then going to a doctor? So like if you have self-diagnosed yourself with depression and then you go to the doctor and they give you something else, then what, like, do you, because it sounds to me from what you were arguing, it sounded a lot like you were arguing that the self-diagnosis should supersede the medical diagnosis.
Wait, did you watch my video?
Or no, I'm talking about what I've heard on this panel. And
okay,
I was also, okay, so then if you, so like so you're just saying that it's important to self-diagnose, that's it?
Yeah, that's literally what I've said. I've claimed that
what
it's
do you
very
mean by
important. I believe very strongly. I've literally already said this. I just wish people would listen to me instead of fighting whatever straw man it is. I think that self-diagnosis is an important process. It is the process that brings many people to get the help that they need to live better lives. It's true for me.
But what was the whole thing about the doctors and the ivory?
Wait, I think it's important to criticize doctors. Also, hold on, I can talk about this. One of the things that you get told when you go to a major, any sort of healthcare clinic where you're getting set up with a therapist is that if your therapist, if things aren't working out between your therapist, because psychotherapy is so important, it's very, very important to have the ability that if you don't
we gotta keep going. I mean,
can I just do this? Can I please? Because
there's 8 people and you're getting half the round.
I get it.
So I have to keep it going.
Not my fault.
I don't care. I don't care. There's no negotiating. There's no negotiating. I don't. This is not a democracy.
I talked a bit this time.
I'm an authoritarian today.
I think counterpoints is next.
I got a little brown shirt
counterpoints are learner box.
We're throwing over to Destiny.
Okay. Do you recognize? Easy yes or no question. Is there a difference to you between recognizing symptoms in yourself versus diagnosing yourself?
I mean, I don't really think so. Those are basically the same process.
Okay, if you don't recognize the difference between these two things, then I don't understand why you are having or trying to have these conversations when you're ill-equipped to do so. I don't understand how you don't recognize the difference between a diagnosis of something versus recognizing symptoms. Because if you would just like couch your language a bit more responsibly, instead of using literal anti-vaxxer arguments like sometimes doctors have made mistakes and medicine can be expensive and doctors are wrong and they've made mistakes. Instead of using literal anti-vax arguments and conflating the difference between a diagnosis versus just recognizing symptoms, most of what you're saying is pretty agreeable. It's pretty important that people are able to recognize their own feelings and able to recognize themselves and able to recognize things that have changed over time. That's probably one of the most important things when it comes to communicating even physical ailments to a doctor. But as soon as you up that to you should diagnose yourself, that is a totally different thing.
I'm sorry.
Hold on. You've talked for 30 minutes. Okay, shut the fuck up. There's a difference between going into a doctor and saying like, hey, I feel like I have crazy mood swings and like I just feel like I'm not making any friends but there's a huge difference between saying that versus going to be like, hey, what's up? I've got a borderline personality disorder. So yeah, right? As soon as you have that diagnosis in your head, it causes all sorts of like horrible things to happen. People that have mental illness are already like cognitively distorted, such that it's hard for them to recognize their own thoughts and other people's thoughts and like what's going on exactly. There could be a lot of issues there. The idea that you would find a diagnosis, start reading the symptom list, and then like potentially maybe matching that is like mind fucking yourself in a way that you should never be doing it. If you want to say self-identify symptoms, that is totally fine and that's super positive, but self-diagnosing with a mental illness and then going into a doctor and potentially fighting them over it is like the worst idea in the world.
What are you? You're literally just inventing a person to be mad at. This is so silly. This is the thing that gets so frustrating.
And you just go on to the next person, Dylan. If she's gonna waste time ad homming, she's already talked over half
literally
the
Look. I am limited. I am doing my best. Okay. Yeah, okay. This isn't the thing about direct adjustment. Okay. If so, you have to make do with the time you have. That's the whole point of this, right? If you don't got the time, then you kind of up shit creek. Okay, DemonMama, I was gonna let you speak, but then the fuck. Okay, just you got 20 seconds. Okay.
20 seconds to respond to all that. Okay,
you just
sure.
wasted 5 of it.
First of all, Destiny, you're wrong about this. There is evidence that shows that there aren't actually negative, particularly notable at all, negative side effects of people diagnosing, going and talking to a doctor. If you go into a doctor, in fact, this is an experience I had where I said, "Doctor, listen, I've been diagnosed with depression, but the depression meds aren't helping my focus issues. I think I might have ADHD. Can you screen me for ADHD?" I was screened with a formal screening with ADHD. Turns out I hit basically every single one for ADHD. That was a process of self-diagnosis. And
okay, so now moving forward from this,
that's your problem.
Not trying to prove Dylan.
Browdigus.
So I agree with a lot of what Destiny said, that looking at yourself and being able to notice what's wrong with you and the kind of symptoms you're showing is extremely important when you go to a doctor. That way that doctor knows. That doctor doesn't live with you. That doctor doesn't see your everyday life. The doctor depends very much so on what you tell them feel is wrong with you. Such as I'm always tired. I don't ever have the energy to do anything. I'm always on the couch. I'm always on the bed. That's extremely important. But to go as far as to say, which DemonMama has, that when doctors are the only ones that can diagnose, it leads to asylums and gatekeeping is insane. It is absolutely insane that saying that the people that have gone to school for 8 years are not as well trained and not as well versed as you are, who when you've looked up WebMD and you've met 3 of the symptoms, so you automatically diagnose yourself with that. There's many more symptoms that can include this. Doctors have consistently said, do not WebMD yourself. I've never met one doctor or never heard one doctor that has openly suggested, you know what, before you come see me, go ahead, look it up on WebMD and figure out what you need to do for yourself before you come see me.
I want to stay in DemonMama. Can I do it?
Sure, then we're going to go to Josie, and then we're going to go to Loner, and then we're going to go to Xan, and we're going to wrap up the round.
You know what? I'm not going to be a dick. Josie, I haven't heard from you. I'm just going to pass off my time.
Okay, Josie.
Nice.
Hello, everybody. How are you? Happy to be here. So I think, I think there is a mistaken idea of what is being said right now, because I know that if I went and broke my arm, I would go to the doctor and say, hey, I think I broke my arm. And the doctor would probably be like, yeah, you're probably right. You're right. Let's take an x-ray to verify that. My PTSD, it was also symptomatic. So I was like really depressed, and I started talking a lot about the Navy and started looking at my ideas. So I went and saw a doctor and said, hey, I think I may have these things from trauma. Can you take a look at it? And then I got diagnosed with PTSD. And I saw symptoms that I might be a little ADHD, and I went to my psychologist, and I'm getting a battery tested to see if I have it. So I'm not self-diagnosing myself with any of those things. Even my gender dysphoria, I didn't say, I'm trans. I was like, I don't know my gender. So I went and saw a gender therapist. So I think that the argument that you're trying to make, DemonMama, is correct.
Maybe Caesar.
I think it's just one of the things of like the self-diagnosis and like being diagnosed officially is the issue. But I think we know ourselves, and I think nobody here is going to argue that we know like the things that are going on with us. We wouldn't see a doctor unless we think something's wrong. We wouldn't see a therapist unless you think something is wrong. And sometimes those symptoms are the things that come up. So I agree. I think that a patient can understand themselves, but I don't think they should go around saying, I have ADHD without an actual diagnosis.
I agree with you. I never said that. Mm-hmm. I never said that anybody
I'm not saying you did. Yeah. I'm not saying you did. I'm just
wonderful. We're going to go to, I think next it was Lonerbox, then Xan.
Yeah, I just had a couple of clarifying questions actually, because when I first saw that there was self-diagnosis, whatever, I just immediately thought like when you go to the doctor and say, yeah, I think I'm depressed, then they check and then they ask you about your symptoms, and then they come back with a diagnosis, and it's them who makes the decision. Like DemonMama, you actually said when you went to a doctor and then you asked about symptoms, and then you asked, I think this might be ADHD, can you screen for ADHD? And then they said yes, ADHD. Is that right? So as far as I know, that's you. Your self-diagnosis was much less conclusive than the diagnosis of the doctor. Would that be fair?
Yeah, for sure. I never said that. I've never once made the argument that self-diagnosis should be the conclusion. I've literally said the opposite.
I just want to follow up then. So, Destiny, was your problem with the self-diagnosis thing just that like that term online in the age of like I don't know Tumblr and shit, or what was the problem with that term in particular?
They're using the words wrong. For other purposes, I think. But like, you're not diagnosing yourself. You're just understanding your own symptoms. That's what you're doing. That's what you're supposed to present a doctor. You're supposed to give a doctor your symptoms, not a diagnosis. Saying that like I'm depressed or like I have attention problems, maybe ADHD, that's fine. But there's a difference between that and like here's the diagnosis I have for myself. But people don't seem to want to understand that for some reason.
Sounds like a pretty small distinction.
It's not, well, it is here because now we're on a panel, but in her video, she said self-diagnosis could be the most important thing. And then she went on to make a bunch of anti-vax arguments about doctors. So that's now like on the panel, it's more
very
reasonable.
Nice, very nice. Nice try, dude.
So we need to throw it to Xander because we only have a minute left.
Yeah, so I have not followed the drama between DemonMama and Destiny, which I'm pretty sure is what kind of caused this topic to come up. So I'm just going to give my best take on this from what I've seen, and we'll go from there. So I'm surprised that I've seen so many people make comparisons to self-diagnosing mental health to breaking a leg or having a yeast infection. There's a big difference between having constipation or looking down saying, well, yeah, I got a yeast infection going on there, and knowing what's going on in your head. The human brain is unbelievably complicated. Right. Everyone has different chemical balances, structure inside of the brain. It's very complicated. I do think, and I don't think anyone here disagrees with this, that acknowledging you've got symptoms and trying to help to alleviate them while you find an actual diagnosis from a doctor is a bad thing. I think what's happening here is a huge misunderstanding of terminology, and that's unfortunate. But I think for the most part, we're all on the same page.
Okay. I would argue that there's a deliberate attempt to misinterpret my statements. If you want to say that, the word self. Sorry, go ahead.
The round is over. You'll be able to open the next round. We have one more round where we're talking about this. Okay. Sure. So, I've gotten the first vote, and it's for Sprouticus. Man, they're gunning for you, Sprout. They're gunning.
Which judge hates Sprouticus? Every single round, right?
I'm kind of curious.
Can I say that?
Some names out here.
I kind of want to say. I'll ask him if I can say it. So the first one is Sprouticus. The second one is for Connor.
Okay, I'm safe.
And the third one's for Connor. Connor, that's what you get for being nice.
Get the fuck out of here! Bunch of
That's what you get for being nice. You gave someone else time. Look, you helped Josie up, and boom, in the
Listen,
back.
I'm sorry, Connor.
That'll teach me to be nice.
That'll teach you to be a nice person. Yeah.
Hi, Connor.
Was it Jordan Peterson said about next, guys?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, hey, before you yeet me, Jordan Peterson won this round. All right.
Wonderful.
Bye.
You have a good one.
Clean your room. It's true. Clean your room. Open some windows. It's true. It's good for you.
Yeeted. Okay. Is anybody gonna? I'm waiting for my staff to eat up. There we go. Okay. Next, we have Prime Kai. And also, I didn't shout out Josie at the start of the last round, so Josie's here too. Okay, we're going to continue. DemonMama, you can open this round. Mental health.
Wait, no. If she opens and everybody responds to her and she can talk for 30 minutes, how is she get another opener?
Dude, calm down, man.
You know what?
I haven't even got a chance to talk
Destiny?
to
Destiny?
Yeah?
Who asked? DemonMama.
Oh, no. Thank you. Yeah, so I really encourage people to go actually watch my video and not just listen to whatever nonsense has been filtered through Twitter. The fact that, like, first of all, the idea that, like, saying the word self-diagnosis is somehow deeply inaccurate is just ridiculous.
Kai's the last guess.
Self-diagnosis is a perfectly valid term. You could also say non-clinical diagnosis, but a self-diagnosis is naturally non-clinical unless you're a doctor. And even then, you know, there's limits to your ability to diagnose yourself. Obviously, there are varying degrees of complexity for all kinds of things that you might engage with. But what I said in my video, the wording was, arguably, self-diagnosis is the most important step. And I think it's interesting that people have ignored that in order to say that I'm some kind of like anti-vaxxer. It feels very weird. It almost feels like people have a motivated reason for why they're making these straw men about me. But whatever. The fact of the matter is that self-diagnosis is incredibly, incredibly helpful, and it can also help you get to a more accurate diagnosis. There's all kinds of things that you can do from the first thing, but you need to be able to recognize these things in yourself. Also, if it's somehow like bad that I said the word self-diagnosis, which I don't agree with that analysis, then I guess you should probably talk to Windows as well, because they have your diagnostic tool that helps you figure out what's wrong with your computer, and you're not a technician. So I guess you might want to have a word with Microsoft as well.
Okay, Sprouticus.
Wait, that was a really weird
Zan and the
last bit there.
So, I agree with you on the first part. I'm going to call it something different, but that's just semantics. I'm not here to argue semantics. Recognizing what is wrong with you in your life is very important when you're dealing with disorders, when you're dealing with what's going on. Recognizing your arm hurts, you fell on it, it hurts very bad. You may have broken your arm, you also may have sprained your arm. Those are two very different things treated in two very different ways. And the doctors, and this is going to kind of close mine kind of statement, is that the doctors, when you go to a doctor, they don't trust the patient. They never trust the patient when the patient walks in. Doctors will 100% verify what you say. You don't walk in and say, yeah, this happened to me and this is what's going on and this is what it is. The doctor will never trust you. They will always take a step back. They will always do something else to verify that is what it is before they make a diagnosis. You don't just walk into a doctor and say, yeah, I've got this. And they'll, oh, yeah, you must have that because you told me that you have that. And here's your medicine.
I don't think anyone disagrees with this.
No, I do.
That's not true, by the way.
That's not true.
I was talking over him. What do you say? What do you say?
Nope.
What do you say?
So we have a time keep. We're keeping time with track of how much people talk. So we're throwing it over the Xan, then Destiny, then Prime. Okay.
Yeah, so it seems like what's going on between DemonMama and Destiny, elephant in the room, I know, they are not fans of each other, and, that's going to happen. But I want to add a little bit on to what Hunter said earlier in a way that does not come off as bad faith, I guess, because that seemed to be how it was coming off. I don't think what DemonMama was saying was exactly an anti-vaxxer argument, but I have debated many times people who have made anti-science arguments, and they've made that argument that sometimes doctors are wrong. They'll bring up examples of the way that the federal government or doctors thereof have engaged in bad practices or have come to the wrong conclusion or have engaged in experimentation that's been wrong, how mistakes are made by doctors and you have to be referred, and that is completely true. And I think the problem is there is that I'm gonna be honest, I think Destiny's got a bit of a bias against DemonMama. I know, I'm gonna take issue with that, but yeah, I think that's the point DemonMama is making, that there is the possibility of doctors being wrong, but that is often, to be fair, often used a lot by anti-science people, anti-doctor people, and I've heard it many times from conservatives who've done that, and I understand the concern there.
Okay, next was, I said Xan, next I said Destiny, right?
Yeah, so the difference between trying to self-diagnose an obvious physical ailment versus a mental ailment is entirely different. Generally, a cognitive distortion doesn't occur when you break your arm.
Argument.
Anybody can look at their arm and see if it's clearly broken. And it also doesn't even really work as an example, because if you say that you quote unquote broke your arm, the doctor's not just going to treat it like a broken arm. You're going to get an x-ray to verify it. Now, there isn't a comparable thing like that for the brain, unless you kill somebody and chop their brain open and start trying to test for gray matter or something, right? There isn't there's generally not a physical test for the vast majority of things that affect the mind. So that's one thing. Secondly, I don't want to run around in circles on this, but I don't understand why people don't understand the difference between what a diagnosis is, whether we call it a non-clinical diagnosis or a diagnosis, versus understanding what a symptom is. There is a difference. I can go to, I might think I have the flu, or I might think I have something, and I go get some cough syrup, or I go get something for a fever or whatever. I'm not diagnosing myself with a particular virus. I just understand I have some symptoms and I'm trying to treat the symptoms. There is a difference between recognizing a symptom rather than diagnosing yourself. And when we're talking about people that might have a mental illness that might inhibit their ability to understand themselves well or understand what's going on around them well, the idea that those people are in a position to make a self-diagnosis is just not true. All you have to do is change the language to, you should be able to recognize your symptoms and whatnot, and then you should be able to go and talk to your doctor about them. Change that from, you should get a self-diagnosis first. It's the most important thing. Don't let doctors gatekeep you from getting a diagnosis.
Can I ask you something real quick? Can I ask a clarification then? Are you willing to roll back your ridiculous statements about me being an anti-vaxxer then?
I think Hunter or Lonerbox are out next
round.
So
I haven't changed any of my arguments. Earlier when you said things like doctors...
You walk back everything.
Can I finish? If you're going to ask me a question, I'm going to respond. So if you're going to say things earlier like doctors lobotomized people in the past, there's flaws in the medical system, the earlier DSM was wrong. This is the exact same types of arguments that anti-vaxxers make, or people in certain communities when they say in the past the medical system has harmed us, or in the past the medical system has had problems. Saying that the medical system has had problems in the past implies that you ought not to trust the medical system today, which implies that a self-diagnosis is more valuable potentially than a diagnosis from a medical professional, because in the past they weren't trustworthy, therefore today they might not be trustworthy. Sorry, we can't say that.
Once again,
I argued against people's
nothing on the topic.
straw man of DemonMama.
So
yes. So Steven and I had a long conversation last night about exactly this. Now, Steven's actually moved me closer to his opinion than I was at the start. I actually had no opinion on this previously, but he moved me closer to his position. But I feel like he's doing it again of like minimizing the effect of bigotry within the medical field, right? And so I'd say that I don't throw out the medical field saying that like minorities can't trust doctors and they shouldn't bother to go visit. I'm simply acknowledging that their experiences are maybe different from the experiences Stephen may have had in the past, right? That when you go to a medical professional, right, the way they treat you is dependent on their own experiences, just like anyone else, right? They are no different from the rest of the population. So they're coming in there with their own biases, their own thoughts about like their own preconceived notions. And so that affects their treatment. Like this, I'm not saying anything revolutionary here, right? It's very basic stuff. So all I want to say is that in terms of people having access to medical care, they may have that access, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the treatment they'll get is sufficient. So I can understand a person trying to self-diagnose because they're not getting the treatment they feel they deserve. However, I do think that they simply shouldn't trust their own diagnoses, right? Like I feel that should always be double checked. If you feel like there's a problem, if you feel that your doctor has diagnosed you with something wrong, right? Well, then yes, get a second, third, fourth opinion if you have to, right? Until you feel that you are getting the treatment that you deserve. But I don't think it's anything wrong with someone simply looking up, right? Like going to going online and trying to understand what's happening within their own body, and then taking charge of their own healthcare. But that does involve actually interfacing with the medical system. And then just quickly, Sprouticus, like, yeah, you're like wrong. Hey, buddy, nice to see you. But you're wrong. Doctors, of course, rely on patients to explain their symptoms, right? You don't just come into the office, sit down, stare at them blankly, and they're like, "Oh yeah, all right, I got this." No, like they take in your input. Now you could be experiencing something and not realize exactly what you. I mean, it's something what Dustin was saying, right? You can experience something and not actually understand what you're experiencing, and you can relate that to a doctor, but it helps them guide themselves. And I'm done. Go ahead.
Right. So you can rely. I mean, doctors can rely on what a patient says, but they never trust 100% that's what the patient means. Patients lie, and you hear this all the time in the medical community.
You watch House. Good work.
So
no, yeah, you do. You watch House.
I actually have.
Watches House. I was about to say that.
So
he does.
So I actually have family members in the medical community. Patients lie. And so with that being said, the doctor will never trust 100% when you walk in that what you say is 100% absolutely the truth. They will always verify afterwards that is actually what's going on before they make a diagnosis. That's how doctors work. Is they take what you say and they take it and they're like, okay, so this is a suggestion. This isn't necessarily a 100% the truth right here. And let's go off this suggestion first, and let's move towards what we think is a medical diagnosis.
Is different from what you said
first
before.
test, no, I said the doctors never trust their patients. They don't. They always verify. They always verify.
There's a couple things I can say here. There's a couple of things I can say here. First of all, once again, in order for the people who've been going way above and beyond to attack my position, they have to strip literally all context and prescriptions in order to make it seem like I'm making some sort of anti-vax thing. Literally never said anything. In my video, I went into great extent about where and why and the issues that are there with the mental health industry in our country, with whatever. And these are real issues that are very, very extensively discussed. For example, I have right here a published study by Kaiser Permanente, I believe the biggest healthcare provider.
And her audio is cut out.
Oh no!
Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
Thank you.
Okay,
I'm back.
Okay, we got it.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Am I able to finish?
Well, no. Now I gotta throw to Josie. You took too much.
Should have wasted so much time on the personal shit.
Okay. All right. I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to bring it back to what this whole conversation was supposed to be about. Is there a benefit to people self-diagnosing and looking at this stuff? And what Prime Kai said is absolutely right about how people are treated differently once they go into that doctor's office. If they're black, if they're a woman, or if they're trans, if they're white, they're affluent. There's so many ways that doctors listen to you. So because we have more access to knowledge and information and are able to go and be like, I wonder what's going on with me, and you're a minority kid in some area where you don't have access to healthcare, it's important for us to be able to say, look, maybe these are these things, because I can tell you right now, I'm not diagnosed with ADHD, but I have fidgets because I know that they actually keep me focused. I do things differently on how I operate and work. I would not know that without access to information. I would not know to even ask a doctor if I had these symptoms at all if I didn't have that access. So the whole debate is about, is this a good thing? And overall, I think more people are seeing help than the negative. So in my opinion, just for the sake of debate, yes, I think that the access to information and having people understand their symptoms for a healthcare system that isn't equitable is a better thing overall. Could it get better? Yes. Is there more access to healthcare needed? Yes. But I think right now we're in a good place of learning more about ourselves and our own humanity.
Okay.
Dylan, can I hop in?
Okay, we have 1 minute. We have 1 minute left, and 2 people haven't talked. So I want to give it to Hunter and Box.
Okay, so
Slender Box and Hunter haven't talked.
DemonMama, I understand your point. I think that it's important to be able to self-diagnose. If that was all your segment was, which was on self-diagnosing, then that would probably be a overall agreeable thing, that we should be in tune with our bodies and understand our symptoms. Sure, why not? But the problem is when you are mixing that in with this long tangent about how, like, the medical field, the past mistakes, the gatekeeping doctors, this leads to the asylums. I know at one point you even used the word the ivory tower. Even if you are not actually anti-intellectual yourself, you are lending credence to anti-intellectualism, which is that your self-diagnosis will supersede that of a professional.
Literally never claimed that, and I request that you please engage with the things that I actually said in context, and not just rip things out.
It's not just about what you just said, it's about the
to be fair, this
of
format is so hard to make your point without having things to nitpick from it.
Because we're gonna go over a little bit.
So this is a bad format.
I feel like I'm lost in translation. I'm trying to think of every single time I've heard someone I know in real life mention the word self-diagnosis. It was always in the context of I've got this feeling, and self was basically like serving the same function as a word like informal or shit diagnosis, just like incomplete diagnosis. Like I don't think I've ever heard someone say self-diagnosis in the context of I'm like overriding the medical profession, or as even as any general kind of attack on the medical profession. I don't understand, but I don't know, maybe this whole conversation is just like more about pride than the arguments, but that's just a personal informal diagnosis.
Okay, so I have the votes.
Okay.
So the first vote is for Prime. The second vote is for Box.
Okay,
and the last vote is for Sprouticus. So there's a three-way tie. And so what we do in situations like this is I make the decision, because I want to make this a formal process.
Oh God, imagine
and when I look
at
the 3 people, the person who I think contributed the least to this round and did the less, so I'm sad to say, Lorna Box. Love you, buddy. But, it's a tough fucking world. And you know what? And I know it hurts the British community because you ain't taking this one home either, okay? Sorry.
Hey, I just came here to make new friends. It's all good. Good luck, everyone. Knock them dead.
See you later, buddy. Okay, bringing the next person is next topic. As we have a Latinx streamer on the stream, we're going to be talking about Cuba. And there's a lot of stuff going on about Cuba.
I don't know anything about
There's
Cuba.
Protests on the street.
I didn't do any
There's
research
sanctions
on this
still placed
topic.
on Cuba.
Fuck.
And there's a big discussion about what's going on in Cuba right now.
Chat.
And what's going on with the
Flash learn. Just
Cuba,
give me all the info.
American and Cuban relations. You
Get
may
me
all
in.
begin.
Help me.
The problems going on with Cuba right now have almost nothing to do with the embargo. The embargo's been going on for decades. The United States is able to export food and medical supplies to Cuba. Cuba just makes really bad macroeconomic decisions. People there that are having protests are doing it on behalf of the fact that, 1, it's an authoritarian regime, believe it or not.
I thought it was over
People don't like
COVID
authoritarian
relief
regimes.
access.
And 2, they're having problems getting access to food and shit. Their ration cards are unbelievable. And 3, the way that they run their economy and the way that they run like their agriculture sector is incredibly inefficient, and it doesn't work. And the country just has a whole bunch of problems that are independent of anything related to the U.S. embargoes, which is what every left-leaning person wants to blame 100% of Cuba's problems on.
No, it's the CIA.
And that.
I mean, I think that's a little bit of a. I mean, I think that's a little uncharitable towards the lefties. But I mean, I think there's points to be said about the extended embargo. But I don't think there's. I think it's very strange that there's an attempt to sort of project a lot of political sort of prescriptions on a protest that's going. Like protests happen in every country. Protests happen here. Like I think it's perfectly reasonable to assume there are people who have legitimate grievances with the Cuban government, especially given a lot of controversial things that the Cuban government has done in the past. But I also think that it's not fair to just completely disregard the fact that there has been not just an embargo, arguably a blockade that's been put on Cuba, and that is going to damage things. That's going to lead to bad living conditions. And we already know this. We've talked about this extensively with regard to how Trump affected Iran with the sanctions in Iran just driving COVID deaths through the roof. Maybe this particular protest doesn't have a direct connection to the embargo / blockade. But I think that ignoring that would be ridiculous. And I think all of us being Americans, it's important for us to recognize that keeping the people of a country completely choked out of world trade is going to have a lot of negative effects. And also it might even encourage more authoritarian behavior, because if a country feels beset on all sides, if they feel like they have no allies that they can work with whatsoever, well, they might crack down in order to hold power. I think we've seen this in numerous cases where authoritarian governments gain power by taking advantage of the external factors that are being imposed on them by whatever world power. I think this is one of those situations where ignoring that would just be out of hand.
Can I butt in? I've got a good point.
Yeah, can I go next? You gotta let me go next. Hey, how's it going, everybody? DemonMama, I have to have a chat with you about the self-diagnosis thing long later. Okay, but wait. Yeah. And okay, I want to say, as someone who is from Iran, I know that the economic sanctions definitely fucking hurt a lot of ways, but I think it's foolish to fall into this trap of saying that it's only the economic sanctions that are causing problems in any of these given places. The people of Iran absolutely fucking hate the government because it's completely corrupt. They just had an election recently where they didn't let any moderates run. All of the moderates were banned from running, and I didn't hear leftists saying anything about this, or it's because America wasn't involved in that. So I think it's important to note that yes, sanctions are harmful, but at the same time, the governments of these various countries also have a role to play as well. And it's foolish to go all the way to one side or all the way to the other side.
Can I get in?
Holy moly, that was a lot of people. Okay, but a lot of people haven't talked yet, so I gotta throw it over to, I would say, Sprouticus, foreign policy expert.
Okay, so the United States should go over and help the Cuban protesters. The Cuban government has been dictatorial for a while now. We've sat by and watched it. President Obama practically praised Fidel Castro while he was in office. So we need to go over there. We need to stop this dictatorial process we're letting happen off just under 100 miles away from our shores. We need to go over there. We need to help. And then after we institute a new government in Cuba and help assist them all the way through, just like we did with Japan after World War II. We help assist them all the way through, all the way to completion. And then while we're doing that, we lift the embargo. We start to give Cuba trade. While Cuba is dictatorial, we should not be trading with Cuba.
Bay of Pigs 2, Electric Boogaloo. Next, I'm going to throw it over to, I'll say Josie Rose.
Okay.
Talking this topic.
So, like any collapse of like the way governmental systems work and state government systems work, it is a combination of everything, right? Like the fact that we have, when Trump put the sanctions on Cuba, just on monetary alone, you had the hard currency in Cuba drop. You had about 407 Western Union locations shut down, airport travel, all of those things happened. You had COVID that happened as well, and you also have the failure of the regime and making sure people have basic rights and the food shortages. Like Dr. Himda talked about Iran, it is a combination of everything. Like the stability of outside foreign intervention, the ability for a country not to just trade normally and trade its goods is a complete destructive factor in making sure that civil unrest happens. And this is also an example, like we were talking about the CIA too. This is exactly what they want. They want governmental systems to be disruptive. They want people to be in unrest. They want these food shortages, these medical shortages, these things, so people start ripping their government apart, so it's easier for them to have a regime change. Now, that may be a little conspiratorial, but the U.S. has a really high history of doing such things. So what we have to do is, yeah, it is a little. It is a little.
Seem like
but at the end of, yeah, but the thing about it is the people of Cuba are suffering. I know people that have family in Cuba, and they are really shook right now. They're afraid that their elderly family members aren't going to get the medical care that they need or are going to die. They're already trying to plan ways to go and see their family because they're afraid of the food shortages and the fact that disease is starting to spread because the basic economic systems in Cuba aren't working. So the things that we need to do right now is humanitarian aid, stop this silly blockade, and actually help people like we're supposed to. Cuba went all over the world trying to help prevent COVID with the best scientists in the world. They tried very hard to help with the vaccine efforts as well. And this is what we do to repay them, is just to sit and watch as their
real brother, this is why I don't go out of your way to help people.
We need to do the right thing and help the Cuban citizens.
That's right there.
Real quick, can I just say one?
I gotta throw it to Destiny.
Okay. I just wanted to respond
as a Latinx Cuban member of this panel. There's just so much misinformation people talk about this. First of all, comparing the sanctions in Iran that are enforced by dozens of countries versus the U.S. embargo against Cuba, these two things are not similar to one another. One, Cuba still has the ability to buy food and humanitarian supplies from the United States. They have had for over 2 decades. And two, Cuba still has the ability to trade with literally the rest of the world. Sorry for the ad hom, but I think it's a little rich that lefties that say that America engages us in imperialism all the time, that America's this horrible trading partner, are saying that Cuba is suffering just because they don't have access to the U.S. like markets. That's pretty funny to me. Number two, there is no blockade. I don't know why we keep saying blockade, but there's no blockade. That doesn't exist. Number three, talking about the fact that like the Cuban currency dropped, it did. But again, these are macroeconomic policies related to how the Cuban government runs its monetary system. Their ending of the dual currency system is why their currency is having so much trouble. Their inability to export goods or services to other countries because of their horrible mismanagement of their agricultural sector.
This is a surprise topic. Didn't prepare for it.
On the United
Prepared
States.
for everything else.
And then in terms of the country cannot trade normally, the country can trade normally. They can trade normally with everybody in the world, just not the United States. Again, if you think the access to U.S. markets are so important that it's like foundational to a country surviving, that's just kind of ironic to me coming from people that say that the U.S. engages in like predatory trade practices.
Okay, DemonMama, multiple people haven't spoken, but I'll give you like 10 to 15 seconds, okay?
I don't count. I just wanted to respond before it gets too far away from something Heem said. Heem said he doesn't hear anybody say like give fair credence to the protests in Cuba. I literally did in my opening statement. I said
I didn't say anything about Cuba. I didn't say anything about Cuba. I said
let her finish.
Yeah, let me just finish. What I was saying is that I think I literally said in my opening statement that I believe I have no doubt. This was the wording that I used. I have no doubt that there are very legitimate grievances against the authoritarian government in Cuba. I just wanted to be clear to make sure that you know that there's
30 seconds. Prime.
So I think that leftists, I think it's a fair criticism that leftists often give cover to like communist governments, right? Like undue cover to them, simply because like the amount of criticism coming their way is just completely unfounded, right? So like on the other end, you kind of overcompensate, and then you can end up defending some pretty like terrible shit, right? So I don't know enough about the Cuban government to actually make a statement about exactly how they treated their citizens, but I could believe that the rhetoric you hear in leftist circles might be a little overwrought, right? But of course, like I can't let this go by. Like Sprout. Buddy, I love you. You know, you're great. But what the fuck? Invade? So your answer is like, oh, there's a protest in the streets, so we invade. Should that happen for all countries, right? Like any country where there's civil unrest, the U.S. should come in, like, and just like put a new government in. Just take one, you know, like we did so well with all the other countries we've invaded, right? So we'll just like transport that and put a new country in there. Like that's ridiculous. I mean, that's like platinum. I mean, I guess why no one actually like talked about this, because it was such a ridiculous topic. Why would we
all right with Afghanistan, to be fair.
Bother with it? But I'll take the time because I like you, Sprouticus, and this was a fucking terrible idea. All right.
You can say it's a terrible idea, but it's what we did with Japan. We stayed with Japan till it was completely done, and we're actually still with Japan. We are their military. In the treaty that we have with Japan, we are their military. They don't get a military.
Afghanistan, Iran, Libya, like,
and so if we did that with Cuba, I think Cuba could turn around. Cuba could be a great nation if they had a sustainable government that could sustain their citizens, give their citizens natural rights. And I think Cuba could really be.
Do you think that's what they're on the streets for? Do you think that's what the people want? That the protests
the Cubans want freedom.
Yes, actually, yes.
Are for an American invasion. Now they may be against their country, right? They may be saying that the regime, they don't like the way that it's operating. They don't like how the economy is going. But do they want bombs to be falling in Havana? Is that what they were protesting for? Freedom bombs dropping on their heads? Is that what they want?
Wouldn't it be a good thing? Wouldn't it be good to know what they're advocating for? Wouldn't it be good to know what they're advocating for before you say it's a CIA run?
San.
Yeah, so this is one of those surprise topics. I didn't have time to prepare for this one, but I've looked into it a little bit, so I've got a bit to say. Definitely don't think the CIA is involved with this. That's pretty conspiratorial. Like, I don't know why that was brought up. But it seems like the people protesting here are protesting for reasons that people generally tend to protest for, and that seems to be a lack of basic needs that a human being needs to survive. It seems like Cuba's access to food and medical supplies has been waning for a while, and the coronavirus pandemic has massively harmed that. The average income seems to be about $60 a week or less in Cuba, so a lot of people are living in poverty. Not to mention the pandemic also harmed tourism pretty badly, and as someone from Florida, I know what it's like whenever lack of tourism ends up coming up and it really fucks up the economy. It seems like what people are protesting for here, at least from what I can tell, isn't a change in government, but a change in living conditions, an increase in the quality of living, because it is massively dropped in the last year and a half.
Right. Hunter Avalon.
Yep. Yeah, I was just gonna kind of honestly, Xanderhal, I agree with you, quite honestly. What it seems to be happening is that it's just a protest for, better living conditions. This is being framed as like an anti-communist protest by some. It's not really like an anti-communist protest at the end of the day. And then, it's also being framed as like a CIA op, which is just like, conspiratorial and kind of laughable. When, it's true that America has a history of messing around with Cuba, but if you look at the way that these protests are going compared to like the Bay of Pigs or the multiple different apps and data mining that they try to do, it does not compare at all. Like, there is no evidence that this is the CIA at all. But we have people, lefties, like Mike from PA was like pushing this bullshit out. So
I think
it's sorry, who? Wait, are you gonna dox someone? Don't dox someone.
Okay.
I think it's
Okay, so for the rest of this, I'm just going to repeat the rules since... wait, let me just check. I don't want to be ableist. Does anybody in here have a hearing problem at all? Like a history of hearing problems? No! Then, my favorite Latinx streamer, I'm sorry. I support you through these
It's
times.
Latinx also, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. But I just want to make clear to everyone, when I'm speaking, no one else speaks. And from forward over, okay? I'm going to use my executive authority more assuringly. Now, Eris, I guess, ditched us. No response whatsoever. I assume she was too terrified by the contestants, so I'm going to give you all a gift. No eliminations this round. None. You all get to stay for another 15 minutes.
Thank fucking
You're
God,
welcome.
Dude.
That's what the chief executive here can do for you.
Thank God.
You're going to continue?
I'm safe.
15 minutes. You can continue on the topic.
So the people in Cuba, they want they want freedom and liberty. They want natural... Sorry.
Oh, thank you.
Sprout, you can go after.
Wow, actually, from now on, I'm going to raise my hand. It actually works, guys. So listen, the thing is we're people on Twitch, especially content creators, people want to just comment on breaking news right away. I've refrained from commenting on this situation because I know that there's probably a whole lot of fucking nuance that I need to educate myself on before I fucking weigh in on this shit. But you have people who put in all capitals CIA involved in Cuba before they even fucking read into what is going on. And I think this is a major problem with like the over radicalization that exists on this platform in all cases, whether we're talking about medical information or the CIA. That there's so many situations in which people just need to look into it a little bit more before right away jumping to the most conspiratorial position. It might be a case that just perhaps there's a downside of capitalism or something that causes a certain problem. But when we go right to the extreme position of like, okay, that's it, just overthrow everything, everything's fucked, then it's like, what is the point of even having these discussions if we're just going to go right to from the extreme right no offense, Sprouticus, when it comes to immigration, to the very fucking extreme left when it comes to, CIA is involved in everything. I hate that, and I wish that we could maybe acknowledge that altogether and move towards a more productive conversation.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to.
These Cubans, they're protesting their government, and again. So these
I would like
no, Dylan literally just said me.
I said Sprout, then DemonMama.
Oh, sorry, I didn't.
Okay. So these Cubans, they're protesting in a government they're not allowed to protest against the government in. This is an anti-communism protest. They're asking for these human rights. They're waving American flags. Journalists are being arrested in the streets. This is hideous. This is absolutely disgusting. America needs to take a step in for the rights of the people in Cuba, and that's what needs to happen. There is no I don't know what Dr. Heimdall's trying to get at.
Next.
Some kind of like middle ground to where we can just kind of blindly show support, like we did with Hong Kong, right? So we just blindly showed support. We didn't do anything, and China completely overran Hong Kong and decided that since the virus came in, that they're just going to overrun Hong Kong, and we just sat there and watched it happen. And so we can't let that happen again. We have to take action in Cuba, and we have to make sure that Cuban citizens have natural rights.
Can I butt in really quick? I haven't talked in a while.
It's a DemonMama.
All right.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think the idea of this level of interventionism is silly. The idea that we should have sent troops on the ground to Hong Kong is that would have been an international disaster. I think we can acknowledge that. To talk to Dr. Heem's point, I also haven't done coverage on this particular event because of the same reason you mentioned, especially when it comes to international issues, protests going on in other countries. I try to be very careful with those things. I think it's very irresponsible to say that that everything is CIA or whatever. I can understand having a conversation about CIA involvement in various countries. There's a real conversation to be had there. In fact, I think there's a couple of videos I could cite that I think do a very good job of documenting the American intelligence agencies and American military's involvement in other countries. But that doesn't mean that you should just jump to that at every conclusion. First of all, it makes you miss what's actually going on. You miss key information. But also, it's just not based on anything. So unless you have the evidence of it, if you have a genuine argument, well, mail it to The Intercept. The Intercept does this kind of stuff all the time, and they'll be able to tell you they'll be able to follow up on that much better than any streamer can. So I do think that accusing people of it being CIA and all that is very irresponsible, ignores the actual state on the ground. And, being a sort of anti-state lefty, I don't really appreciate like people the desires and requests of people, the demands of people who are suffering being ignored in the name of just saying, oh, it's CIA. That's ridiculous. There's real grievances that are here. Now, is there some room for critique of this? Sure.
Wonderful. Okay, now we're going to throw it over to Josie Rose.
Yes, thank you. I feel like my position has been misrepresented. I did not say this is a CIA op. I said if the country fails, then we may have to worry about such things like that. But what I was talking about really was the conditions on the ground. The fact that a lot of those conditions on the ground were expedited, or I guess made worse, was because of the sanctions that were put on Cuba, where one third of their revenue comes from remittances from Cuba. So people going to Cuba, giving family money through Cuba, and all of that. Like, people sending money to Cuban citizens was one of the economic pillars that kept Cuba going. And I have to disagree with what Destiny said earlier about Cuba can trade with anybody. If you were to say that to Mexico and say, hey, Mexico, you're not going to trade with America anymore, you don't think that would devastate their economy because they're so close? The fact that they are so close to us basically makes them a bordering nation. Frankly, you can literally take a boat across the little strip of ocean. So the fact of the matter is, the connections that we have with the U.S. and Cuba need to be restored and brought back to a position where we can actually have a partnership.
You can swim there. There's a lady who swam from Cuba to the
we have been
Keys.
saying yes to Cuba here, no to Cuba here by the coming and going administration. And that is what's caused so much strife, is that people don't know if they're going to have food for the next presidential administration, if they're going to have money, and they're just had enough, and they just want basic human rights and human services. So ignore the CIA thing. The CIA thing is if they collapse. I did not say that this is a CIA op. So thank you.
Let me in, Coach.
And to add one thing on there, just a very quick thing.
We gotta keep it going. Okay. We're throwing it over to Xanderhal. I don't think he's talked. Have you talked this topic?
No, I haven't.
Okay, Zan.
All right, yeah. So as this panel's resident Floridian X, actually, I will say that I think there is no reason whatsoever, nor is it realistic for what Sproutic has said, to expect that America is going to invade Cuba, occupy it, and put in place a new government. There's no reason to do that whatsoever. It would be unbelievably unpopular. No, whatever president that did that would probably be committing career suicide. That would lose them the election, possibly. Americans at this point are not in big favor of occupying other countries. You can tell because of the fact that even though we've got fairly good reason to be in Afghanistan, Americans want our troops out of Afghanistan. What's probably most likely is that out of a gesture for good PR is that we'll probably send some.
Did you lie to me?
Did I lie to you?
Did you speak this topic?
Yep.
Wait, did I spoke last round, not on this round, no.
Wow.
He kicked me. He actually kicked me. What? Oh my god, tell me it's not a joke. Tell me it's not a joke. Is that real? Dude, real? Actually? Actually real? No fucking way. I'm going to Dylan's stream. I'm going to Dylan's stream. What the fuck? Real? I mean, I've kind of assumed for a while Dylan doesn't like me. That was some cold shit. Ruthless. That was actually bullshit. Bring him back. Holy shit, dude. Oh my god. Well, you know what? I consider that a win. I consider that a win. I actually consider that a win. If I get removed for that reason, it means that I would have made it. So I consider that a win. Actually rigged. Damn, dude. Well, yo, Zan, let's talk about it. Did you message me? He said it's nothing personal, kid. It's not a big deal. It's like it's internet stuff. Like I think Dylan Burns is a cool dude. It's just internet like debate panel stuff. It's not that big of a deal, okay? So I don't want anybody to send hate to Dylan Burns. I don't want anybody to unsubscribe, unfollow, dislike or whatever Dylan Burns because of that. It's not that big a deal. Why was Zan kicked in the first place? I misunderstood Dylan's question when he asked had I talked that topic. I thought he meant that round, and I said no, I haven't talked this round yet. And then he kicked me and said, wait, did you lie to me? And then all of a sudden it closed, and I was like, wait, he kicked me. Wait, real? It's not that big a deal though. I don't think that, like, yeah, I'm not that mad. Mm-hmm. Mao Destiny says sorry. It's all good. It's all good. All right. I'm not mad. Anyway, though, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell icon if you haven't already so YouTube actually tells you when you're watching a video or the stream. Follow me on Twitch. Subscribe to me on YouTube, ring that bell icon. If you've got the money for it and you don't need it for anything else and you just don't know what to do with it, please donate it to my stream if you'd like. You can do it on my website, xanderhal.com/live, by either subbing, gifting a sub, or donating. It's very appreciated. Same goes for on YouTube. You can become a channel member or super chat. And on Twitch, you can prime sub, or gift a sub. Any type of support whatsoever is always appreciated. Thank you all so much, and have a good one.